And bonjour. And so this is Bruno LARVOL. I'm here with Darko Medin. And this is a second podcast. And we call that podcast Biostat AI, etc. Today we're going to talk about AGI, super intelligence, sometimes called. And our goal is going to be, we might talk a little bit less biostatistic than in other podcasts, but our goal is going to be to talk about it from angles that you haven't heard before. And we think we have a unique thing to say about AGI. So thank you for joining in. So before we start, LARVOL is a company based in San Francisco. We work at the intersection of data, oncology, and AI. And Darko, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thank you so much, Bruno. Amazing to be at the podcast, and really looking forward to discussing some very interesting topics today. Just a quick few words about myself. So I'm Darko Medin, biostatistician, clinical biostatistician for a very long time, but also someone who is very interested and is working in the space of AI engineering and other AI fields. So as Bruno said, today we will not be discussing too much about biostatistics. We'll be focusing about one very important topic, which is artificial intelligence, specifically some topics around artificial general intelligence, artificial superintelligence, some topics that are, still not clear to everyone. So we're definitely going to discuss some angles that you might not have been hearing before.
Yes. Well, there is an angle to biostatistic, which is, in a way, are you afraid, either for you or for maybe younger people studying biostatistics, that if AGI, whatever it's called, it reach, you won't need really biostatistical experts anymore, and all the work you spent to train will become moot? Would you recommend your little nephew to go into biostatistics?
Well, that's an amazing question. For now I would. For now I would, and it will be more clear why when we dive deeper into the discussion. But when the actual AGI becomes ASI, and when some advanced features are there, well, it's difficult to say. I think things will change definitely. The way we learn and the way our professions learn today will change. It will not be the same, definitely. And for now, I'll say that. But later, I will explain to the audience why. Why would I
Okay.
right now suggest, hey, you can learn biostatistics. You're still not in danger of
But as
any
long as
AI.
you shouldn't be anti-AI if you do biostatistic, because you never know how much AI will take away. So I'm showing that little fellow. Do you know who that is?
No,
Okay.
would
So
like to know.
this is the Muppet from pets.com. Right? So
Oh,
25 years ago, there was another major, of course, boom, followed by bust on the internet. And the symbol of that boom, of the hype, of the unsustainable sort of businesses build on that hype is that beautiful little mascot here, right?
oh
Uh, the, the
yes.
little the little mascot from pets.com. Of course, pets.com went away, but other companies were successful with that internet bubble. So arguably, maybe it's the same thing with AI, except that we invested already, maybe committed $500 billion, right? $500 billion. And some people argue the only reason we can justify so much is that if the promoters of it promise AGI without defining it, without saying what it is, because as soon as you define it, it's a bit like defining God, right? If you define it, we could really have a different conversation about it. But if you don't define it, you can keep talking about it and hyping it up. And as far as I know, nobody is really defining it except maybe the French guy, François Chollet, right? Who's a very, who have an objective benchmark, or I think ARC, the ARC test. Everybody else is talking about it in a very broad and very sort of unverifiable way, essentially. Right?
This is the Muppet speaking. Can you explain to me the AGI in a way that I can understand about it? Since you
Thank you.
mentioned about defining.
Thank you, Muppet. Okay, I'm going to pass the message to Medin, to Dr. Medin. So go ahead, Darko. How would you
Okay,
define AGI?
let's try to answer the Muppets question. You know, I think you're right when you say that so many people have a different definition. I like to say about AGI that it's like a ghost benchmark. We have not seen it yet. We don't know what it is. We cannot measure it, but we know it's somewhere out there, right? We know it's somewhere out there in the future. It may become live at one moment, but for now it's a ghost benchmark. There are so many people that have a different definition of what AGI is for them. If you ask Elon Musk, he will tell you one thing. If you ask Sam Altman, he will tell you another thing, maybe related to physics, maybe to quantum gravity or something like that. I think there is also a definition by Demis Hassabis from Google DeepMind that thinks AGI, and forgive me if I'm not 100% accurate here, but I think something like AGI would be something, an agent AI entity that can pretty much rediscover the theory of relativity or some other similar physics theories. But there are a lot of differences. We don't know what it is. It's difficult to predict. What will that actually be? But there is a very broad definition that AGI would be an AI that can do pretty much everything that a human can do intellectually. So across the board, all the intellectual capabilities that we have, whether they're emotional intelligence, logical intelligence, mathematical intelligence, all types of intelligence combined that we have, if AI can do the same level, the same benchmark, then it would be the AGI. However, I think there is something that most people don't think about here. When you think about machines versus humans, there are things where machines are already much better than humans. So if you think about all the big data servers that are built around the world, and by the way, some of them are actually making majority of the country's GDPs for many countries. They're so large. That kind of compute power, it's something that a human cannot match, right? So the machines already have more compute power, more processing power, more memory, more scalability. They don't tire. So there are a lot of characteristics of machines that are so much above humans. Now, if we create an AI entity that can do intellectually everything across the board as humans can, and you combine that with what's already present, huge compute power, almost limitless memory, huge scalability, no tiring, it's practically immediately going to jump over that human level. That is the definition of AGI by most people. It's just going to jump over it very quickly and become ASI, which is the artificial superintelligence. And I think I have a hypothesis that AGI will actually not exist. Even if it exists, it will exist just for a very short period of time and will very quickly be superseded by ASI, the artificial superintelligence.
Do you think that they're going to be a recognized qualitative change to reach AGI? Or is it just essentially a continuous line of cognitive improvement, smart improvement, memory improvement, compute improvement that AI is going to climb, certainly, and that in many aspects it's better than us, in a few aspects it's not better than us yet, and it's essentially there's no particular point really. So I would argue that it's a PR gimmick, that there's actually nothing called AGI. It's just a continuous improvement in the intelligence of these models to help us, or probably not to hurt us, or probably not, and that the whole AGI concept is just a concept that grabbed people's spirit, sort of the zeitgeist, so to speak, and is great for PR, but actually doesn't mean anything. It really doesn't mean anything. So I'm more of the point that a little bit like trying to define God objectively. The concept of AGI is useful, mostly for PR, but really doesn't have concrete measurable meaning. And that all the people are saying, is it in 5 years, is it in 10 years? Are we already there? Is the machine just already super smart but playing dumb? Is it like touching the black monolith in 2001? Remember that, right? In that movie, wonderful, right? The pre-human touched the black monolith, and then they become smarter, right? Is it like the model touching the monolith and getting smarter? I argue all of that is kind of moot. It's just PR. And I would argue also with Yann Lequin, Lanyo Kun, as we say in English, Yann Lequin in French, the head of one segment of AI at Meta, that LLM is going to be absolutely reaching a cap, reaching a plateau. And not only because it's probabilistic, but in my opinion, because there's no more data. And after you consume all the data of the internet, everything else is hard. Private data is hard, synthetic data is unclear, and growth of data is slow. So absolutely is not going to scale beyond this. And the people who are saying continue scaling are selling you something. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not excited about AI, Darko, but I really think that it already plateaued, essentially. GPT 4 to 5 absolutely is plateauing. It's incremental. It's no longer exponential, like with 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. And so whatever AGI is, arguably is not going to be reached by LLM. What do you think?
No, I completely agree. I think, LLMs have very, very little chance, at least in the form that they are today, to become AGI. And they were never even close. There's a lot of fundraising there. There's a lot of, marketing for a lot of companies, but LLMs they never really weren't even close. And it's the same for the agents as well. If you look at how agents work, there's a lot of buzz around agents, but most agents used today or even sold by a number of companies, they can't even learn, right? So they're really static in terms of the knowledge they have. We can add some RAG materials, we can add some context, but we don't have real learning agents yet. So when you take those two things into account, AGI is very, very far away. So those people who are saying, AGI is going to be here in in 3 months or in 5 months or in a year, I don't think that's correct. I think we are talking more in the realm of whether it's 5 years, 10 years, or even more than that. However, I think it's a great point to think about, what will the dynamic of reaching AGI be? So I think it will be a lot about using novel approaches. So the LLM approach on its own has pretty much expanded most of the energy that it had. So now we have to use different approaches, maybe combined with some past approaches, but definitely, it is those novel approaches and novel breakthroughs, if I may use that term, that will mean making these leaps forward. But I do agree that this leap will not be like one moment. There will be probably multiple leaps, and we will probably feel that we are getting closer and closer to that moment of AGI. But as I said before, as we approach that AGI moment, I think we will start to realize that AGI will just be a very short phase, and then we'll go into the phase of superintelligence, artificial superintelligence, maybe even singularity. I can just imagine what will happen when artificial superintelligence can recreate itself in a way to be better. So there will be this exponential loop of increase of the power of AI. So I think at first it will be like that. We will not feel a lot of changes immediately. But as we approach that moment, as the big tech companies that have invested a lot of money into these projects, as they actually start to make breakthroughs, and we can't really tell when that will be, we will actually see those breakthroughs. They will mark the leap. Those individual breakthroughs, and then we don't really know what will happen later. I think it's really unpredictable to say what will happen when we even get to the 90% of the AGI. It's really tough to say, but I don't think it's going to be everything that most influencers are predicting that's going to happen. I think it's going to be quite different to what we're thinking. It's a novel space that we'll be discovering there.
Despite what I said about AGI, I agree with you. It's going to be a fascinating journey and adventure. And I actually think that it's worth $500 billion. So if AGI helped us sell investors and investing $500 billion, I'm good with AGI. I just it's kind of it irritates me when very smart people like Elon Musk, Altman pretend that it's a thing that they have not defined in a sufficient way to agree or disagree between themselves. but at this point, they're marketers, right? They have to be. I mean, they need sovereign funds to give them another $100 billion. So they have to be PR machines. I go back to that image of 2001. You saw the movie, right? Space
Yes,
Odyssey
yes.
2001. So some of you have seen it, maybe the younger one haven't. And I do think actually that on November 30th, 2022, we, in some way, society, were these apes waking up somewhere in the desert, like in the movie. And we saw that black monolith standing there, and we were curious and touched it in some ways, right? And that was the launch of ChatGPT, November 30th, 2022. And of course, in the movie, that triggered the intelligence. And a little bit later, the same proto human all of a sudden discover tools. And what do they, right? They discover they can use an old bone as a tool. And Darko, do you remember what they do with that tool?
Yeah, I can't really remember.
They kill
Can you
each
help
other.
me?
They
Oh,
kill each other.
oh.
The tribe that touched the monolith and figured out they can use a tool, a piece of a big tibia as a sort of a stick to hit the other ape, wins the other tribe. So intelligence led to war. So I just, I just hope that image is not is not it, because I guess us in China, right? We're fighting towards an economic and a technology war. My hope is that it stays as an economic and technology war. So, Darko, any final points before we close that second podcast on biostat and AI?
No, I think this is a super interesting topic, and some very interesting angles there. I would just connect to what you were saying just a moments ago. As we make more powerful AI, and again we're mentioning that moment of AGI, we're going to need to be more careful. You know that it's used only for the good. So, and that's not going to be easy to achieve, right? So I think we have to start preparing right now. All the countries around the world need to start preparing for what's going to happen when the AGI level is reached. You know, how do we make sure that it's used only for the good? Because there are a lot of risks there. All the CEOs are acknowledging that, of all the CEOs of AI companies, and that will be crucial, as all these other things that we are discussing, like how powerful will it be? We will be maybe able to solve a lot of oncology problems with AI that we cannot solve today, a lot of other science problems, a lot of problems for humanity in general. But how do we make sure that it's used only for the good? I think that's another question. That's another
Hmm.
question mark. That's unanswered.
Yeah, for sure. Darko, on that note, merci and au revoir.
Thank you and au revoir.